Welcome to Feminism Today, everyone. I'm Sophia Johnson in New York. Fashion brands like Benetton, Abercrombie and Fitch, and Michael Kors, among others, have long sourced their products from globe-spanning supply chains and low-cost manufacturing hubs in Asia. In a shift that could prove a lasting legacy of the COVID-19 pandemic, RangSutra has emerged as a leading brand shaking things up in the fashion world. The company is owned by a community of artisans, mostly women, with an eye on global consumers and the rapidly changing urban market. Jumita Ghosh is founder and managing director of the social enterprise. She joins us now from her office in New Delhi. Jumita Ghosh, welcome to Feminism Today.
Thank you, Sophia. Happy to be here with you.
I am really so excited about our conversation today. India makes up about 16% of textile imports to the US and about 5% of apparel and accessories. And that's according to the US International Trading Commission report that was recently published. Now, there are a lot of business models out there, lots of competition. Why did you start a company? Why did you start RangSutra in particular in 2006?
Well, I started RangSutra in 2006 because I felt that rural Indian women, especially artisans who live in rural India, were getting the raw end of the deal. The rest of our country had progressed quite a bit with the opening up of the global economy. And, so people, middle class people like me who had access to education and jobs could do better and better. Whereas the rural artisans and communities I had worked with earlier were struggling just to stay in one place. So I felt that this was very not correct, this was unfair. And what can we do to bring about a change? And knowing that artisans have amazing skills till today, despite all the mechanization and the factories, they still have a lot of hand skills. And the good news, of course, is that globally, there is still a demand for handcrafted items. And so I thought I would match these two and create a company which caters to the global demand for handcrafted goods.
Now, when we spoke a few weeks ago, you described yourself as a social entrepreneur. You work both with male and female artisans, yet with an eye in particular on women's empowerment in villages. Why the focus on female labor?
Well, we look at women as not just labor, but also, as owners of their skill and their traditional knowledge. And the reason we focus on women is basically because, some many years ago, I came across the study which said women all over the world do 65% of the world's work, earn just 10% of the world's income, and own only 1% of the world's resources. I thought that is incredibly unfair, and therefore decided to focus on women. And also, I had an experience of working with rural communities prior to setting up RangSutra, and I found that women, especially marginalized women, if they were organized and and they formed collectives, then together they could really transform themselves and the world.
Now, this is all very good. I'm thinking as well about self-employed women during this pandemic who've been facing the brunt of the pandemic in this sector in particular. The informal sector, the data shows, plays a pivotal role in the Indian economy, accounting for, as you rightly captured it, 55% of the GDP. Can we talk a little bit about why the social enterprise model is a better model, if it is at all, in terms of tackling inequality?
The main reason for it being a better model is that, in our company, all the artisans are also direct shareholders in the company. They own the company. So they know that they have rights to get regular work because that's what they bought in for. And they also have responsibilities to ensure that they provide the supply the right goods at the right time, and therefore this combination of two makes it a unique model. So everyone is invested in ensuring that the company succeeds. It's not just the top management or the few owners. And I think this collective ownership, the community owned company model, where the focus is mostly on the social aspects and on the environment, of course, and not only on making profits. Making profits is important for sustainability, but at RangSutra we have a saying: She who works with a head, heart, and hands is a craftsperson. And the combination of all these three can be amazing and can be empowering for everyone across the chain.
I love that vision. She who works, I'm already messing it up, but she who works with her hands,
Head and heart.
she who works with her head and hearts.
And
Um,
her hands. She who works with a head, heart, and hands is an artisan.
I love that vision. I love that vision. Let's talk a little bit about, and sort of in that same milieu, let's talk a little bit about the production process and the environment and how that factors into the social business model.
Yeah, so at RangSutra, everything is co-created. We have co-created our company. So even when we create new designs, it's not just one designer sitting in a studio somewhere making the designs, but she goes down to where the craftspeople are, sits with them, develops new motifs, develops new designs. Together they do the costing. Together they create a new product, and we show it to the market. And this kind of philosophy of inclusion, of including everybody, goes down the chain, so that once we get the orders, then everyone is involved. Right at the village level, we have village centers. That's one of the main things we had to do, and a change we had to bring about was that, earlier all the artisans were based out of home, and we found that it was very difficult to get the work done properly. It was very difficult for the women to do the right quality. So we found local houses and local buildings in villages where women could come and work together, learn together, share their, generally work together as colleagues and as friends. And that creates a real that made a real difference, in the sense that there were less rejections. People were able to do their work on time. They had support of each other, and they could do their work without being disturbed by children, etc. And therefore, it helped us really do, grow from strength to strength. So that's a very important part of our work, that artisans get work. Women come to centers in their village, and these centers are safe, secure, and places for working, for learning, and for growing. And this way, we initially started with the B2B business and working with Indian retailers, then went globally, working with global retailers. We also have our own brand, which is growing from strength to strength.
Mhm.
And that's how our model works, actually, Sophia.
I'm curious how you were able to get and find allies in rural industries. And also to find, you mentioned that you work with B2B, but I'm wondering how easy or difficult was it as a female entrepreneur to find these allies to support a social enterprise that was largely going to be comprised of women?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So let me get to the village part of it first. So prior to setting up RangSutra, I had, about 10 years, more than 10 years of very close working relationships with rural India, where at community development. And so there was a fair amount of trust there with local NGOs, local community-based organizations, and of course the women and men artisans. So when we said that, let's start a company, and when we started it, we did not get funding, actually. We went to a regular bank for funding, and you're right, like as you said, no one wants to support a woman entrepreneur, especially one who's, starting a business for the first time. So we were refused funding, and that's when 1,000 artisans, 80% of whom were women, stepped up. They put in 1,000 rupees each, and that's how we got our first 10 lakhs to start our business. So the initial bit was a bit difficult, but then we had partners along the way. There was Fab India, an Indian brand which has
Mhm.
been working in the craft space for the last almost 60 years. They supported us with work and orders
Mm.
and investment. And down the line, we also tied up with IKEA. who had a plan to, or a vision to really support women workers, and that's how the partnership grew from strength to strength.
This is really fascinating. You touch on so many things that I want to dig into. I want to talk about the fashion. That's the fun part, right? I also want to talk on the home collection. Let's talk before we even dive into that. I just wanted to take a minute or so to talk a little bit about the banking piece. Ahead of our conversation today, I read, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Muhammad Yunus's Banker to the
Yes.
Core, as a gateway to opening and creating opportunities for female entrepreneurs. What I find especially insightful about Yunus's work, he got the Nobel, a shared Nobel for his work as an economist, but also in framing the Grameen Bank. How important are these types of structures to supporting the work of women, especially in South Asia?
Extremely important. We ourselves are supported by the UNIS Social Business Fund, especially when we wanted to grow and needed working capital. And, people are not willing to give working capital, banks, because we don't have collateral. Our equity is only that much. And so organizations like UNIS Social Business Fund they are happy to lend funds, money without collateral, and very, very supportive in have been very supportive. So they play a very crucial role in supporting small enterprises, especially women-led enterprises.
Now let's talk. Let's sort of spend a little bit more time on this. What are some of the key selling points for banks, for investors that are looking at these small businesses? What are some of the selling points that you had to sort of pitch in terms of how you were going to change the way business was done in this particular sector of the economy?
Yeah, that's always been a challenge actually, and I must say that the initial support came from our B2B buyers,
Hmm.
and who supported us with loans for working capital, and then the banks came in a little later. Now we have a good relationship with a large Indian bank called the Exim Bank, the Export Import Bank of India,
Hmm.
and I think what helps is if you call them to where your work is, where the artisans are, or where this fabric is getting woven or getting embroidered, and they see the work on the ground and meet. I think what really helped, I remember this. What really helped was calling the bankers to our AGM, our annual general meeting, where we had 300 women shareholders and men also at the meeting. And when the bankers interacted with them, they realized that the power of this collective. Until now, we've been able to pay back all our loans on time. So I think gradually the trust has grown.
I want to now spend a couple of minutes talking about fashion. You mentioned Fab India. I had no idea. I spent a lot of time in India, but I had no idea that RangSutra was one of the partners for Fab India. And I guess you're sort of opening up, giving me some insights into the space. But can we talk a little bit about your collection of clothes? I've seen your website. I haven't been to your boutique, but I love Fab India, and and I love the collection that I see on your website. So, can we talk a little bit about your designs, the clothing line? What type of energy you're trying to evoke with your collection? Does it reflect the community? The fabrics reflect the community. Let's talk a little bit about the clothing line.
Yes, that's a very exciting topic actually, and it's always inspiring. So when we create clothes for a Fab India, we first initially work on a brief given by them, and then together, as I mentioned, the designer and the artisans work closely to create garments which are timeless. So it doesn't really fit into the category of fashion in that sense.
Mm.
I'd call it more style, and it's different because I think style, your style evokes who you are, and says a lot of about who you want to be without having to really talk too much,
Hmm.
and it doesn't change from season to season. So we create hand embroidered, hand woven garments, which which is not fast fashion at all, which takes time to make. So we need to get our orders at least 6 months in advance so that we can take those 6 months to create these garments. And so it's not in the fast fashion category. I would call it in slow fashion. When we talk about our garments. So whether it's this kurta that I'm wearing,
Hmm.
which is hand embroidered, and so the customer who buys it obviously understands that it's hand embroidered and is willing to pay a decent price for it, and also treasures it for longer. We think because it is made by hand, and there's a connection to the women who have made the garment. And I think that creates a good connection, between the customer and the artisan. And at Rangsutra, we like to be this bridge between the customer and the artisan.
I think it's amazing. How do you find the artisans?
Oh, very enthusiastic, very enthusiastic. Um, Initially it was okay, they worked for a little bit, but they didn't get much money. And then gradually, as they got regular work, and it's not just for the money. Yes, of course, their incomes have gone up, like, quite a bit over the years. But the feeling of being part of a group, of being a working woman, getting dressed in the morning, taking a bag, and going, walking or cycling to your center.
Mm.
And there you sort of, from an unorganized, you get into the organized sector in a way. All of them have bank accounts now. They sign a register when they come in. There's a creche for their children. There's always, space to learn and to grow.
Mm.
So there's a lot of enthusiasm, especially from the younger women who look at this now as aspirational, not just as a hobby which their mothers and grandmothers did earlier, but this can also, especially the design aspects, the chance to market. And uh, I must tell you this story about this artisan who whose house I went to, and she had framed the RangSutra certificate on back of her wall. And I thought she had misunderstood, and she took it for a training certificate that she had got. But she said, "No, I know this is a share certificate." I said, "Why have you framed it up?" And she said, this certificate has my name on it.
Mm.
The house that we live in is in my husband's name. The farm that we cultivate is in my father-in-law's name. This is the only thing which is in my name, and I treasure it, and therefore I framed it up. It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
And then I tell myself, it's been worth it. All the paperwork that has to be done to open accounts, and now demat accounts. Our
Yeah.
government has this rule that stocks shares have to be dematerialized. But it's been worth it, because I feel that it gives women a chance to be what I call economic citizens of the world.
I love that framing, economic citizens of the world. We need more women as economic citizens of the world. So at this particular point, you're you have artisans, I believe, all over the country, but I read that you have some in the in the northwest, right?
Yes, yes. In Jammu and Kashmir, yes. And in Rajasthan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I understand you also work with the men. What do the men bring to the table?
So the men the men are traditional weavers in Rajasthan. They're handloom weavers. So they continue to they play a very important role, because like this bit that you see here is hand woven on a pit loom by some of our men artisans.
Hmm.
Women also know how to weave this, but it's an art which is a craft which is dying, and they are able to weave this, and almost sort of how should I say, compete with mill fabric, although this is takes more time and therefore is more expensive, but it's also long lasting. And also, let's not forget that handloom weaving doesn't use any electricity. So there we are, saving on carbon emissions and all that. And so therefore it's they we like to encourage younger men to learn whatever their fathers and grandfathers knew in the past. Of course, more and more younger men want to opt out of this profession and go into more fast digital life, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we think we have about 300 men who work to weave this fabric, and without that fabric, the embroidery that you see here would not be, I mean, we wouldn't have the fabric to do the embroidery on. So men do play an important role.
Right. So you mentioned a couple of things, and I'm wondering if we can sort of probe the issue a little bit further. Um, the pandemic has really shifted the types of activities that big corporations, big fashion brands like Michael Kors or Abercrombie Fitch and Benetton have been engaged in. And it's really, in my mind, I don't know, it's created an opening for businesses like yours, brands like yours, and Fab India to engage in this space. How are you planning to do business a little bit differently? And do you see these markets, the Michael Kors, Abercrombie Fitch, the Benetton, the Italian markets, do you see these as potential markets for RangSutra to make inroads on?
Of course, I see them as potential markets. The only thing is that they will also, just like we have tried to change ourselves, transform ourselves from being unorganized, home based village workers to an organized entity. The big brands also will have to change the way they do work, and it's for the good of all, actually, because ultimately, with the brands we work, existing brands, Fab India and IKEA, um, it helps people all along the chain. I mean, we have been able to show that this kind of model where everyone down to the last link and up to the marketing and retail at the other end, if everyone is involved and committed and passionate and has a purpose, then it can really benefit all across the chain. Because what happens is, otherwise, when it's an exploitative kind of industry where garment workers are not paid enough, artisans are not paid enough, they're not going to work again later on. So unless they are remunerated well, unless their work is valued, and given the due recognition, they are not going to be able to produce these beautiful pieces of work. So, yes, I think there's a lot of scope, and I think that more and more brands are realizing the importance of what is called the triple bottom line, or looking at social impact, looking at environmental impact, apart from just looking at profitability.
Right. I mean, a few years ago, before the pandemic, I know there were a lot of problems with the factories, some factories across South Asia, either poor working conditions or just low wages, non-livable wages. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about your fair trade model. I know that that's front and center of RangSutra. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. So, as I said, we co create the new products with our artisans. And in this process, we look at how much time an average artisan takes to make a particular piece. And together with her, we decide what the cost of making that design is going to be. And therefore, the costing is done in a way that is fair. That takes into consideration at least minimum wages, and definitely more than that, a living wage, a fair wage. And so far, and whatever added to that, whenever we make profits, the artisans also get a share of the profit. So this kind of model, fair trade model, it has worked for us very well so far. And going ahead, this is how I think that everyone should be really going about their work, so that no one is shortchanged, no one is devalued, everyone's work is respected.
A strategic decision by RangSutra, obviously, for more control of production process and also more control of the transportation costs, which is key to the textile sector, the manufacturing sector of clothing. Um, I think the big question here is, how does a woman lead with confidence and stay relevant as a global brand, as RangSutra is doing?
That's a tough question. At RangSutra, not just me, all of us who were involved and who are involved, whether it's my 100 plus team, a lot of women there, or the 2000 plus artisans we work together with. One motto that drives me and our team is, be the change you want to see in the world. So whether it means putting your best foot forward, whether it means making that extra time to make that piece on time, whatever your work is, whether it's you're embroidering something or you're managing other people, managing a process, or whatever it could be. So I think that's where it is begins change begins from yourself, and then of course it spreads along to your team, and you bring that same inspiration and same enthusiasm into the team. And I think one of the important things has been, we are fortunate that our passion for this work also has a purpose, which is to improve the lives of marginalized people and people who've been discriminated so far when it comes to access to education or to work. So this combination of passion and purpose has really helped all of us to stay focused and grow every day.
Love that. What should global advocacy and activism look like for women in the fashion industry?
Yeah. So I think, as a feminist, as a woman, um, I think that one of the main things that we can do, each one of us can do, is to first of all really understand the story behind the product, what goes into the making of the product. Is it, yes, of course, the woman is earning in the process, but is she getting empowered or is she being exploited? As we say, every garment, every product we make has a voice and it tells a story. And I think all the customers that we reach out to can add their voice to our story, and to bring about empowerment of women globally.
Jamita goes. I love that vision. Thank you so much for your time this week.
Thank you, Sophia. Wonderful to talk to you. Have a nice day.
And that's it for our program today. Remember, you can follow me and the show on Instagram or Twitter. Thank you for watching Feminism Today on Free Speech TV. Join us again next week.